My name is Sophie Halter and I'm part of Teenage Cancer Trust Youth Advisory Group of 2025. Now, I'm beginning this channel because I want to express my feelings and emotions around one of the key topics of childhood cancer. Childhood cancer to me doesn't seem like it's a topic widely experienced or even discussed. When you think of cancer, your initial thoughts might be an old person, somebody who is in their later years of life, or somebody who may be dying. But cancer doesn't just mean death, and it doesn't just mean older people. It also affects younger generations. So I'm 16, for instance, so there could be other young people my age, younger, older, who are experiencing cancer. And a cancer diagnosis doesn't just affect you in one way. Cancer can affect you across all mental aspects, your mental health, it can affect your physical ability, and it can affect your future. For me, I was diagnosed with cancer in August of 2023, and my diagnosis wasn't easy, and having experienced that and lived through it, it gave me a wider understanding on the topic of how cancer does affect each individual in different ways. So I was affected by stage 4 non-Hodgkin lymphoma, which to you guys, it may just seem like a random medical term. And non-Hodgkin lymphoma, there's two types. So there's two types of lymphoma. One type is non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, the other is Hodgkin's. Hodgkin's isn't the rare type, but non-Hodgkin's is the rare type. So I got the rare type of cancer. But it doesn't mean I didn't fight it. And I wouldn't be standing here today if it wasn't for medical professionals who were able to help me get through that. And especially those around me who supported me through the mental health side of cancer diagnosis. When I was diagnosed with cancer, I never knew it was cancer at the beginning. All I found was a lump in my groin. I was in and out of A&E, I went into A&E, got my bloods tested and everything. And I had surgeons actually look at the lump that I had. And they thought it could be sepsis, tropical disease, catch scratch disease, and it could have been anything really, appendicitis even. And they couldn't pinpoint that exact treatment that they needed to give me. So I was on a lot of antibiotics throughout my time when I was at my original hospital, so my local hospital. And they couldn't find out what was wrong with me. So they were in contact with other hospitals based in London and around the UK. It wasn't easy knowing that I was under all of this medication and nobody knew what was actually wrong with me. I kept on getting temperature spikes, I was feeling really uneasy, night sweats, etc. And then I also found a mark on my leg, which dermatology team at my local hospital said they wanted it removed because it was a form of skin cancer. Skin cancer, there's many types, there is a vast range for different types of cancers that can affect different age groups, but they wanted that mark removed. I was rejected from 2 hospitals because they couldn't do that, so that mark was left. About a week or so later, they did manage to find a hospital that could take me and to treat me for a biopsy. So a biopsy is where they take a small sample of the tissue and test it for what kind of things it could be. When I got to the second hospital I was treated at, I ended up going 5 days without on and off eating because some days I was going to go down for operation, but then emergency cases came in which were more critical than my condition was. I was stable and I was able to be kept on that baseline. When I was waiting around, it did become a bit agitating. I did get very annoyed and I felt really restricted because I didn't know what was going on. I never had any belongings, so my parents had to buy things from local areas that they were in. And it was really difficult. Being in a children's critical care unit wasn't the best, but if I wasn't there at the right time, I may have not been standing here today recording this video. And with cancer, you don't know really what could happen. But when I was being treated, I ended up on the 5th day having that biopsy done. I didn't get told directly, but my parents got told they had an hour to pack their bags, tell me I had cancer, and we were going to be transported to another hospital for treatment. I never had any belongings, so when my parents got told, they found it quite difficult to try and tell me that, especially as I was on ketamine in this hospital. Now, ketamine, if you don't know, is a horse tranquilizer, and that drug sent me really off my head. I was saying rational thoughts, and it was scary. And I know from speaking with my mum, she found it quite difficult too. When I was in my local hospital, I was on morphine, high doses of that, to try and help me with the pain. So when my parents got told I had cancer, they then packed their bags, but the ambulance team had already come and they were ready to transport me to another hospital, to another location where my treatment would be. When I got to the 3rd hospital, around the 15th of September time, I was taken straight through to critical care, which was an adult's critical care unit, because I was at that age where I needed treatment, but my age was a barrier. If I was younger, they would have sent me to a different hospital, and I was at that age where I was in the middle of adulthood and childhood, my teenage years. Now, teenagers struggle the most through their cancer diagnosis because they're too old to be classed as a child, to be on a child's ward, but then they're too young to be integrated and merged with the adult section. So that age group, that age category is the most difficult because there is no section, there isn't really a main ward where teenagers can go. So teenagers usually range from the age of 13 up until early adulthood. Teenage years don't just stop when you hit 19. There is still this big block afterwards, which involves adulthood, early stages, getting used to that cycle of working maybe, and university level. With my cancer diagnosis specifically, I was taken straight through onto a critical care unit. Now, at the critical care unit, I was kind of like diverted from my parents. So my parents were taken off into a room. I was taken into my own room. My parents were signing paperwork to try to keep me alive. Whilst they were signing this paperwork, I was currently being sedated and everything else. Eventually, after a little bit of time, I was then vented. I was put on kidney dialysis, and I also had my stomach pumped. So what that means is they put a tube down and they had to pump my stomach to get all of the muck and everything out of my system, just so I wouldn't choke. It felt weird when I was moving. I didn't really know what was happening, but I was lucky that one of the ambulance crew members were the same person who transported me from my original hospital to the 2nd hospital, and then from the 2nd to the 3rd. So it gave me that peace of mind, like, oh, I recognise her. I know I feel safe, and I had that comfortability in how I was being treated. I didn't feel scared. I did feel a bit scared, but not scared in the sense of I don't know where I'm going. I knew I was safe with that one individual. Eventually, I did manage to come around and I did wake back up again. But during the time I was asleep, I was given emergency chemotherapy, which involved having an injection of chemotherapy into my spine, 2 mild chemotherapies and 2 intense. Now, that might just seem like a bunch of words to you, but to me it means something. It means my treatment was specialised and tailored to me to help save my life. And without that treatment, I may have not been able to fight it. I may have been struggling a lot. Whilst the cancer was in my body, it also spread. That's why stage 4 comes into the mix. The stage 4 cancer, it attacked my spleen mainly. Now the spleen, it filters the toxins in the body. So part of that organ is still currently dead at the age of 16, which I am now. At the time of diagnosis, I was 14. I was 14 years of age and dealing with cancer and school and friends. It's a key moment in your life when you think about it. I was just going into my year 10 mocks, exams, stress. Everything played a key role in my diagnosis. I hated the thought of falling behind because I knew my pathway from my future was laid out. I knew I wanted to complete secondary school, move on to sixth form, then university. Cancer threw itself bang in the middle of finishing secondary school and hoping to go to sixth form. At that time, I wasn't really thinking about school. I was thinking about myself, trying to get myself better, stronger, and ready for what the future may bring. When I was eventually coming out of kind of like a 10-day coma, I call it. It was a weird way I was told. And this isn't the doctor's fault, it wasn't the professional's fault, it was nobody's fault. They assumed I was already told in the previous hospital that I had cancer. But I didn't know. I was high on drugs, so I couldn't really think or have that thought process there to be like, oh, I've got cancer. And at that age, cancer to me wasn't even educated about. It was mentioned once or twice through biology lessons or some lessons that we had, but it was never actually focused on as a main point because it's a topic that I am passionate about, and I feel like it needs to be widely recognised in schools and in the education system, because nobody is really educated on the cancer effects and how cancer affects everyone, no matter if you are going through treatment on your own or if you are somebody watching an individual going through that. You could be a friend, a family member, or anything. You don't necessarily have to be that individual going through the cancer treatment or diagnosis. And it is a scary time. It's not easy to be told you've got cancer. I know it was difficult for me because when I just woke up, I had doctors come in telling me the side effects of chemotherapy, losing hair, sickness, fatigue, and everything else. It was hard to hear. It really hit hard. It was hard to understand for myself how that would affect me, how it would affect my appearance, especially at 14 when I was really, really paranoid about my physical appearance. I didn't want to lose my hair. I hated the thought of being sick. And I also wanted to feel energized. I was quite sporty as well before my cancer diagnosis, so I was never unhealthy. I didn't eat a lot of junk food. I had it once or twice, occasional. But that's what most teenagers would do. But I didn't have it a lot, so I was relatively healthy. When you think cancer, initially, you would think cancer is a disease. Cancer isn't just a disease, and it's not really a nice word to associate cancer with. Cancer is an illness, not a disease. A disease can be classed as COVID-19, measles, mumps, all of that. But cancer itself is an illness. It's not anything that can be passed on, unless if it's through genetics, which is another story. But cancer itself is, as a whole, a difficult process, especially as you aren't sure if there's treatment. You're not sure if you can beat it. You're not sure if you can make it through. In some cases, it is difficult to beat the cancer. But it doesn't mean you're not a fighter. It doesn't mean you haven't pushed yourself to your limit where your body can't do any more. You have still fought somewhat of a battle. Just because you may have failed, because you may have terminal cancer, you are still fighting it. You have still tried your hardest. And it doesn't mean you're not strong, because you most certainly are. You most certainly are a strong human being. Cancer is one of these things which I feel like needs to be talked about. It needs to be widely recognised. It can't just be something that we leave in the background of things and just think, oh, I'll get it when I'm older, because that isn't the case. There are young children right now, as you are watching this video, as I'm speaking, who are diagnosed. There are 7 new cases of cancer diagnosis every single day. And when you think about it, that is a lot in a year. In 365 days, that is a lot of people who are being diagnosed with cancer. More specifically, young people. For me, my cancer diagnosis, which I keep on referring back to because it is a lot more easier for me to relate to the topic, because I've experienced it. And now I am in remission, which I'm very, very grateful for. But my treatment was very difficult. I kept on having my treatment changed. I kept on having things completely thrown upside down, you name it, it was hard. I couldn't see any friends because I kept on being neutropenic. Neutropenic means when your blood counts are below the average, below the normal, and it means you are more vulnerable to picking up these illnesses around. So a simple cough or cold, you may pick up really easily. You may get COVID if it's still spreading around. You can get anything, little. And that's just because your body can't protect yourself. Your body can't form them layers, them white blood cells, platelets, everything, all the components of your blood. That barrier is gone. But it still means you're fighting. You may feel a little bit more tired, a bit more down, but still, you are fighting it. And with cancer diagnosis, it is difficult. But my best advice to new patients, or best advice for you guys to give somebody you may know who is going through that cancer diagnosis, I would personally say, don't say the phrase, I know exactly how you feel because my other relative went through cancer, because it is not the same. I know that quite annoyed me a lot when I got told it, because I would always sit back and think, but you don't know. Your relative may have had a cancer diagnosis. They may have gone through chemotherapy or radiotherapy or any other type of therapy around dealing and treating with cancer. But it doesn't necessarily mean you yourself know exactly how you feel. As individuals going through cancer, it's different for everyone. Everyone has different feelings. Some people may not even go through all of the side effects of cancer. I know when I got told I'd lose my hair and end up being sick or having nausea when I'm eating, that didn't really happen to me. So everyone is different. The side effects of chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and everything to treat cancer can be different. It's just general terms. It doesn't necessarily mean, yes, I'm going to go through that, because it is different for everyone. Every individual has their own story. They have their own experience and their own feelings. Now back to what I was saying about the phrase, that does get quite annoying. You may be able, as individuals, to relate to people around you, around the person who is being treated for cancer. So, say me, I got told by somebody I know that they know exactly how I feel because one of their relatives had it. And I thought to myself, but they don't know how I feel. They don't know what I'm experiencing, how my brain is functioning and processing this information. But they can maybe relate to a little bit about how my mum or how my dad might feel, maybe even how my brother feels. But they don't know exactly how I as an individual feel, because it is different. It is different for everyone. With being part of Teenage Cancer Trust, I feel like addressing these issues is important, because if you haven't heard, Teenage Cancer Trust supports individuals from the age of 13 up until 24. And this is classed as the teenage years. Teenage Cancer Trust helps to provide nurses specialised to the role in cancer, and they just help with a lot of support. I'm part of their youth advisory group of 2025, and that means as a group, as there are multiple of us, we are able to think about issues which regard cancer. And I wanted to start making my own advocacy about this topic because I feel like it needs to be stressed. It needs to be addressed and everything else. It needs to be something that we push towards maybe government, maybe even schools, and try to push it to the Board of Education, because not many young people are told about cancer. It's kind of kept in the background. It's not really focused on as a topic. It's kind of hidden from society, and that isn't really fair to be doing, especially when it is a struggle enough to be dealing with cancer. And especially when mental health support isn't always up to the standard that we need. Mental health support is key in cancer, and that's when I'll come on to another topic, where mental health plays a role in a cancer diagnosis, because it is also something that needs to be focused on. But I just wanted to say thank you for listening, and I know this video is quite long, but thank you so much for listening, and hopefully the next one will be out soon.